Verse 316. The Skandhas are divided into 25, and there are 8 kinds of form, 24 Buddhas, and there are 2 kinds of Buddha sons. We've got quite a few of these verses coming up. And my first impression was, I think the Sagatakam, this part of the Lankavatara Sutra, is losing the plot a little bit. It happens. It happens as part of enlightenment practice. I need to be very careful. I found a certain way of expressing something, a certain form of words, and it's quite easy to just fall into that form of words when giving my commentary here on this part of the Lankavatara Sutra. It's very easy for that to happen. To just get used to a style of words. To develop a habit, a verbal habit, and to give you a verbal habit instead of something a little deeper. I don't know how successful you might think I am in this, but I do know when I'm editing these videos and preparing them for upload, I can usually tell whether I'm on the ball or not. And I would have to say, usually I am, although there are possibly times I've not been. And I think this is true of these texts, these very old texts. Perhaps the original mind that composed them was very pure. Perhaps it had some lapses, or perhaps adulterating components have been added to the texts over the substantial period of time for which they've been around. So we can't always assume that what we're getting here is from the enlightened mind. And in fact there are some verses coming up to do with the lifestyle of the yogin, which I think possibly are not very helpful to the enlightenment practitioner. But what about this verse? Verse 316. It's a description of lists. 25 skandhas, 8 kinds of form, 24 Buddhas, 2 kinds of Buddha sons. The early Buddhists had a fetish for lists. In fact, it's what often distinguished one Buddhist school from another. The lists that they adhered to. The school has managed to resolve in reality into so many fundamental components, but this school over here has got a different number of components. Take your pick. So I suppose if I was an academic looking at this, then I'd be doing some research. 25 skandhas, 24 Buddhas. But I'm not an academic. It's not the point of these videos. The thing we've got to realise first of all is that there is nothing sacrosanct about these lists. The numbers in these lists often vary. In fact, the very first one gives us a clue. The skandhas are divided into 25. Well, if you've got some familiarity with the skandhas, you'll think, 25? No, there's usually 5 skandhas. There's some subdivisions amongst the skandhas, For example, consciousness is one of the skandhas. There are 8 consciousnesses, but you'll be hard pressed to make it add up to 25. 8 kinds of form. Well, there's the 4 elements: earth, air, water, fire. Well, there's also the 4 characteristics of the elements. That would give us 8. 24 Buddhas. What are we supposed to make of that? 24 Buddhas. That number varies. In the very next verse it tells us there's only one Buddha. Later on, verses 380 and 384, we're told there are 36 Buddhas. I thought, I did a very quick search on Google. 36 Buddhas, typed it in, but I could only come up with 35 Buddhas. There apparently is a list of 35 confessional Buddhas. I couldn't find any list of 36 Buddhas, but I didn't look very hard. Because, as I said, that's not really the point. What if I came up with a list of 24 Buddhas? What have we got? 24 Sanskrit names? What use is that to anybody? In fact, this seems to me to be so over the top that it's worth looking into, rather than simply dismissing. I suspect there might even be a bit of a tease going on here, a bit of a sense of humour. The skandhas are divided into 25. Well, this so blatantly goes against the usual understanding. It's a bit of a poke. I think what it's saying here, I think the understanding here is to look into this a little bit more deeply, to look into the teachings of the skandhas. Now, the skandhas have been described in detail elsewhere, particularly in video 13, which was devoted to the skandhas. And this isn't just a bit of information. These videos are about enlightenment practice. The teaching of the skandhas is a review of enlightenment practice. So what we've got here in the teaching of the 25 skandhas is a return to this understanding, a return to looking at our spiritual practice, our enlightenment practice. So where do we begin? Well, we've got a clue here. There are 8 kinds of form. I mentioned form is often understood in terms of the 4 elements and their 4 qualities. That would give us 8, wouldn't it? The 4 qualities are resistance, that's the earth. That limits our freedom of movement. Our freedom of movement is the air. It allows us to move freely, it allows us to breathe. In between that, we've got water, which is viscosity. It kind of allows us some movement, but with some resistance. And we've also got heat. Heat is what keeps us alive, but also heat works like resistance. If it's too hot, we back away. So it kind of limits our freedom. I don't know how useful this understanding is, but it does sum up our situation in quite a basic way. But form is rupa, that's the word. And this has been explained before. Rupa, the whole point of it, is it's what attracts the attention. This is our situation. This is where we begin in our enlightenment practice, is acknowledging our situation, understanding our situation. And our situation is one where the attention is getting pulled this direction, pulled in that direction. And there are usually 5 areas in which it can be pulled. We're pulled to visual objects. The attention is directed to visual objects, to sounds, to sensations, to taste, to touch. That's the 5 senses, isn't it? So that's the 5 senses. Normally though we talk of 6 senses in Indian understanding because the other realm that we perceive is the realm of mental objects. We can visualize things. We can consider ideas, and ideas attract our attention. Mental images attract our attention. When you're daydreaming, you're lost in that particular realm. So these are 6 perceptions really. Now, we're just talking about the attention, what attracts the attention. There are these 6 spheres which attract the attention. And when this happens, it's the beginning of a process. It's the beginning of a process by which we regard these things as perceptions. Perceptions of something out there, or in the case of the mind, the mental perceptions in here. Perception is one of the skandhas. We've got form, we've got perception. So that actually gives us 12 things now. We've got what the attention is attracted to, 5 so-called physical sense perceptions to 5 different modes, plus the mode of the mind. And then we get caught up in this idea that we're perceiving something, whether it's a physical or mental object. So that's the senses. So that's perception. That's summed up in the sense organs of the eyes, the ears, the body, the tongue, the nose, and the mind that perceives mental objects. And going on with that, we get to the skandha of consciousness. And the relevance of this is what gives a sense of reality to what we're apparently perceiving. This is what consciousness does. When you're conscious of something, you give it reality. So we give reality to each of the modes of perception. In the case of the physical modes, we give reality to a world out there. And in the case of the mind, we give reality to our imagination, to our ideas. These are often more real than the physical reality. If you think about things like money, music, religion, belief, economics, mathematics, we give these things a very great reality, more than the physical reality actually. So we've got 18 now, 18 factors. We've got 18 skandhas. The 6 things which our attention is attracted to, in the understanding that these are 6 perceptions, 6 kinds of perception, and then the belief that these things are real. That's another 6, that's 18. And that covers 3 skandhas, skandhas of form, rupa, of consciousness, vijnana, and of perception, or samya. There's 2 other skandhas. So we've got 18 so far. I mentioned how we are caught up here in the process of creating the reality of a physical external world and the reality of the inner world. This is the reality of the world and of the individual in the world. This is our disposition. We have this habit. We're constantly reinforcing this habit, this story of an external physical world and of an individual here experiencing that external world. This is our fundamental habit energy, our fundamental disposition. And this is another one of the skandhas, the samskaras. So these are another two factors. And this relates to the two Buddha sons mentioned later in this verse. But I'll come back to that. So that gives us 20 skandhas so far. We've also got the usual list of 5, Vedana, or feeling. And feelings are what drive the whole thing. These feelings are normally classified as good, bad, or indifferent. We're attracted to something, or we're repelled by something, or we're indifferent to something. So there's usually 3 feelings, but I'm just going to go with 2 feelings, because if we're indifferent to something, the attention isn't normally going to be attracted to it. We're normally only attracted to things which please us or displease us. So we'll count 2 feelings in there. That gives us 22. So we're 3 short of our 25. Well, let's go back to the 8 kinds of form. We actually listed 6 which attract the attention. But there's 2 more. There's 2 more. And I think the clue here is in the list of consciousnesses. There's 8 consciousnesses. There's one for each of the 6 senses. And the remaining 2 are what give us the opportunity to practice enlightenment. Once we realize that what's going on, and this is the practice of the skandhas, realizing what's going on, and we realize that the problem is in the attention getting diverted to these various modes, these various 6 modes. Once we realize this, we can turn the attention to its own nature. We can become aware of awareness itself. So this is when the attention is resting in itself. It's not being hijacked. It's pure awareness. When you do this, and when you appreciate this, that's 2 more, 24. Then this is liberation. And that's 25. So these 25 skandhas, understanding them as a detailed enlightenment practice, takes us to liberation. And this is why we've got the 24 Buddhas. Now clearly Buddha here does not mean the Buddha that walked around teaching and meditating, and after whom the religion was named. The Buddha is an enlightenment opportunity. And since One of these 25 skandhas is enlightenment itself. The other 24 are enlightenment opportunities. They are Buddhas. Every time the attention is being attracted to something, we have an opportunity to turn to the Buddha. There are 24 opportunities. That's a lot. 24 Buddhas. And the two Buddha sons, or let's say the two children of the Buddha, are those who undermine this whole process of building up the reality of an external world and of the individual walking around in it. This is a major part of the work of the Enlightenment practitioner, which is what the Lankavatara is about. Dissolving that habitual reinforcement in the belief of an external physical reality and of a personal individual reality. There are only the skandhas going on, and within the skandhas we can find our awareness. The attention is this awareness, this attention which we use all the time and don't give it any consideration or appreciation. We don't realize that this attention is the great miracle. It's the key to liberation.